Well, thank you for coming out today, and I understand the time change was kind of a conundrum for people. And obviously, my first time speaking here, so who is Stephanie Allensworth? I have a rather unusual story, but it might be a usual story for some people. I was not born with a silver spoon in my mouth. I like to say it was a spork. I was my mother's third child at the age of 20 by 3 different men, and she abandoned me, all of us actually, almost immediately. It gets a little touchy here for me, but my father married my mom after he found out she was pregnant with me, and they were divorced before I was even born. So I started out a little rocky. And my father did come and take custody of me, but we ended up moving in with his sister and her family. So as a child, as an infant, I became the 7th child and the youngest of this group that was already established. And I grew up thinking that I was one of them. So it was a harsh reality when I started thinking, well, why do I have a different last name? Why do I call my dad, Dad? Why do I call my uncle, Uncle, but we all call Mom, Mom? And I started asking questions, and I never really got the same answer from anybody. It's like, I never knew my true story for the longest time. And my dad, my birth dad, finally, started dating again, and eventually he remarried. Now, I thought I was gonna go with him. No, he left me behind. So, abandonment issues. And I realized that I started treating men very, very badly after that, almost as badly as I treated myself, because I felt like I was just a disposable child. And I went off proving that to myself and proving that to everybody around me. I became a drug addict at 11, and my birth mother finally showed up when I was, I think, 10 years old, and she had remarried. And I knew who she was immediately. I walked into my aunt's house and saw this beautiful woman, and I went, "You're my mom, oh my God." Well, 2 years later, she actually kidnapped me at the age of 13, and I moved out to California with her. And now I'm moved into this entirely strange family, right? I had 2 half-brothers, because I guess she was getting the family back together again. She got my 2 older half-brothers, and then she came and got me, and now I'm living in Southern California in 1971. Now, you take a child that's already been doing drugs and getting into trouble, and here she thinks I'm this little princess that she can dress up, and I'm like, she's in for a wide awakening. So, things didn't change for me there, and actually became more of a Cinderella story, because all of a sudden, I'm the one that's doing the laundry, I'm the one that's cleaning the house, I'm the one that's doing the dishes. I am doing everything a mother is supposed to be doing, and my mother just laid in bed most of the time. So, and she was angry. She had big anger issues, and so 2 years later, I ran away again from Southern California with a girlfriend, and we hitchhiked up to San Francisco. Well, we were aiming for San Francisco, Haight-Ashbury area there. And we never quite made it. We ended up in Santa Cruz, where I thought for sure I was going to be murdered by a group of people. Because when you're on the road like that, hitchhiking, you end up having to depend on strangers for food, for shelter, for this type of thing. And we ended up meeting a bunch of boys at a gas station that had like a 30-gallon bag of weed, and we were like, hey, let's hang out. And it got pretty scary. And that whole piece is going to be in my book. I am actually writing my autobiography right now, and it's called The Girl Least Likely to Succeed, because nobody thought I would do anything with my life. It was like, yep, she's just on the road to be just like her mother. She's going to be just trash, blah, 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 And this is a dialogue that I heard growing up. And this made me want to do a speech about how we talk to our children. Whether they're your birth children or not, never tell them they're stupid. Never tell them they're ugly. Never tell them that they'll never become anything, because you have no idea. And I hear people talk like this to their children all the time. And I think it's a horrible sin. Children understand that, they take it, they internalize it, and then they go off and try to prove it until something shifts in their life. And luckily, something shifted in my life. And I started making changes little by little. Actually, I'd ran away a third time because when I came back from my little trip to Santa Cruz, my mom kicked me back to Minnesota to be with my aunt and uncle again. So, so I always say that by the time I was 19, I think I lived 3 separate lives, and very distinct, different lives, until I started making my own changes. When I started working for myself, not for myself, but working, getting a job, getting some money, being able to move out of the house, and being responsible. But I was still a party girl. I still wanted to party all the time. So that interfered with any real growth that was going on, and it was stunting my natural intuition, which this is an awesome story. So my husband and I, who is sitting right here, were sitting at the airport going on a trip. Excuse me, I'm getting a little dry. Now, we're sitting in the airport waiting for our airplane, and it was back in the day when you still had to have a camera, right? And the battery in the camera was dead, so I took the battery out, and I said, yeah, I'm gonna go walk around and find a kiosk that sells this particular battery, because it was a photocell battery. And I was walking around with it in my hand the whole time, and nobody sold it. About 20 minutes later, I returned and say, well, we'll have to wait till we get there to get the battery. I put it back in the camera, and it's fully charged. And we were like, ooh, was that me? Did I do that? What? Hey, hands. Well, not long after that, my uncle, who I actually call my dad, he had an staph infection in his aorta after surgery, and he was in intensive care, writhing in pain, and I was like, well, maybe if I can charge a battery, maybe I can charge a human. So I just went up to him and I took him by the hands, and you know about intention, right? It was with all the intention I could pull out of my body. I just went, you know, and just tried to give him as much energy as I possibly could without even telling him, because he was writhing around so much, nobody, he couldn't talk or anything. So, and the next day he was out of intensive care. And again, I'm like, did I do that? Did I? Was that, and we all really know that it's not me. I'm channeling the energy that's coming to us. But I didn't trust it. And then the third episode, my aunt mom was in the hospital, and they said, call in the priest because she's not going to make it through the night. And my birth mom had died 1 month earlier of the pneumococcal pneumonia in California. 30 days later, I'm faced with my aunt with the same thing, and they're saying she's not going to make it. And they wanted to intubate her, and I'm like, no, because that's what they did to my birth mom, and they say that's like the death wish. Don't do that. Unless you absolutely have to. So we decided not to. But again, I went in there, and I'm just like taking her by the hands, and now she's coherent because she's not knocked out by the drugs, which they would have done with the tube. And I'm talking to her, and she's like, nah. And I'm like, Mom, I'm giving you all this energy. All you have to do is take it and accept it and bring it in and use it. Let your body use it for the greater good and to heal yourself and give you strength to get through this, because I know you can get through it. And my sister cousin, you have to kind of keep a crib sheet here, she's standing there, and my husband's standing there, and my sister's like, what are you doing? And he's like, Tom says, shut up, she knows what she's doing. And I'm like, I really don't. I really don't. But the nurse was also in there, and after a night full of me going back in and doing some rounds and giving her the energy and with all this massive intention, she made it through the night. And everybody was shocked and amazed. And then I see the nurse talking to the doctor, and they're pointing at me. And later on, the nurse asked me if I was a Reiki healer. And I said, I don't know. I don't know what I am. I just think that I have this gift. Well, this put me on a path to do a deep dive into the metaphysical. And I started just sponge, taking in everything, every book I could read. I started taking classes with Echo Bodine. I did the psychic development classes. I've taken Deborah King's energy healing classes. I have hooked up with so many great teachers and people who inspired me to keep believing that I had the connection that I could help people. And and it's not me, but I do carry a lot of electricity, I have to tell you. They used to call me Queen Electron. I blew up a $400 phone just by touching it once. So, it's flash, smoke. It's like, oops. Was me. But it was. So this took me on the path where doing this deep dive, and I was always interested in this stuff, even from when I was a kid. I had this little tiny fortune-telling book, where you could read, playing cards, and do divining. But I actually come from a family which I didn't even know for years. It didn't even dawn on me that my father's side of the family had natural abilities too. And I remember, I think I was maybe 6 years old, one of my great aunts brought me and my sister out to the woods and showed us how to do water divining, because she was a water diviner for the farmers up in Princeton. And I had no idea what that really was. I thought, kooky old lady with a willow witch, that's what they used to call them, the willow witches. And, but after thinking about it, it's like, well, maybe I have a natural ability. Well, we all do. We know that now. We're born with it. It's just whether you decide to keep it, use it, expand on it, believe in it, which I didn't for years. I went for the longest time being an atheist. I didn't even believe that there was a greater God. I didn't even believe in aliens. I do now. But all of this reading, all of this studying, just led me to have so much more confidence in myself, and to want to help people, and to go out and do healings for people. And I do little tarot card readings for people too. I would do it as, I actually started a little business that I called Transcendence, and was doing some healing in my office, and then I'd end it with a little 3-card tarot reading for them, just as a little side gift. And I was having a lot of fun with that, but it wasn't really, it didn't feel good to me to charge people, so I don't. I go sage people's homes, I give them healings, I pray for them, I do all kinds of things for free. And then, I skipped over a big part of my life where I decided I was going to be an actor. So I took acting classes, and eventually, for 12 years, I ran a talent agency, both out of Minneapolis and out of Beverly Hills. Hard to say that word. And I slowly lost all of its luster, so I slowly closed it down. And one day I'm sitting at my desk and going, well, God, what am I going to do now? And I looked in my drafts on my computer, and there was a submission for one of my children's books to a publisher. And I went, oh, thank you. Okay, now I think I know what I'm going to do now. So I started writing my books and got 2 published so far. I'm working on my autobiography, and that is called The Girl Least Likely to Succeed. And I think that everybody should believe in themselves, because even though nobody believed in me, I managed to become what I'm not a millionaire, and I don't drive Maseratis or anything, but I'm a success in my own mind and in my own heart, and I feel like I've got something to share with people, and I can share it through my stories, I can share it through my television show, which it's really a cable access show, it's like, Wayne's World, I guess, on, metaphysical stuff, but I want to talk to people that have great stories to share. And normally I'm on the other side asking people questions about their life and letting them tell their story. And the inspiration came to me to tell my own story by doing Toastmasters. I was sitting in my Toastmasters meeting, and they're like, well, we don't have a speaker. Who wants to speak? And I'm like, you know what? I think I'm just going to get up and tell my story. So for 6 minutes, I gave the very condensed version. And these were all people I worked with for 40 years, right? To drop jaws. They all looked at me and went, well, we thought you were normal. It's like, is that really abnormal in this day and age? I mean, it's pretty much the norm for most people. But it's really how I managed to succeed was to not believe all of that negative narrative, is what I call it, that was hucked on me as a child. I had to eventually see myself as the person that I am and that I came to be, and believe that I could be that person, that somebody that had something to share. And now I'm, writing the autobiography, and that apple basically hit me in the head. It's like, this is what you should be doing, Stephanie. You should be getting up and talking to people and telling your story and sharing this story so others can believe in themselves and others can share their stories, because it's very healing when you can stand up and let that go finally, because it's something that I kept inside for so long. Very few people knew my early years. So changing all that, going forward, I met the love of my life. And he was such an inspiration for me. He convinced me to go to college. I'm the only one in my family to graduate from college. He convinced me that I could be an actor. He instead of you're stupid, you're ugly, and nobody would want you, he's like, you can do whatever you want, girl. And I believe it. And I believe it to this day. And I'm not done yet. There's plenty more to come. So I've got more children's books to write. They're all true stories, by the way, of all the animals that I've encountered or we had as pets growing up. Stories just that I think are very inspirational, but also teach children to appreciate pets, appreciate animals, love nature, that sort of thing, because nature is really cool when you really, really look at it. And pets are very healing if you treat them right, but you have to treat them right. So there's more to come, and I'm just going to open it up for questions now. I know we're way ahead of schedule, but I talk fast because I'm nervous.
We'll wait for audio so that we can collect it on the YouTubes. But I have a question regarding your story, your wonderful story at the hospital early on, where your husband said, no, she can do it, even though yourself you were, I can't do it. What role do the loved ones in our life play in that, in our evolution to
validation? It was validation, because I suspected that I knew what I was doing, but I really didn't. But I ended up taking Reiki classes. And I'm like, oh, well, that's what I've been doing all this time. Okay.
Other questions right now? Come on. Sherry's got one.
So you mentioned the Reiki. Where did you take the classes? And you also, I heard you mention Echo. And did you spend much time learning from her and her group?
Yes. Well, first, the Reiki I took with Chuck Bow, Koslik Bow, down at the Eye of Horus. And with Echo from her center in Minneapolis, I took her full psychic development classes, and then I started doing the advanced classes there. And I'm pretty open now. I've got, and strangely enough, my husband is just as probably psychic. I'm going to tell this story because I think it's pretty funny how I got a chiropractic adjustment from God. I'd having hip problems really bad, and it was really affecting my right leg. And I kept, in my meditations and in my prayers, asking for some healing. And we were down in Costa Rica at a wedding, and this was like just 3 years ago. And we're sitting in this little, well, it's like this big Jeep, but you have to walk up 3 steps to get into the back of this thing. And there's no handrails or seat belts or anything. And I'm like, they're porting us from the wedding up to the main house in Costa Rica. And I'm sitting there with 1 glass of wine, and he's sitting across from me, but I'm hanging on here. And he's like, and we had to stop and let somebody out. And he looks at me and very, very clearly says to me, "You better hang on, because he's going to pop the clutch. You're going to go flying." And that's exactly what happened. And I'm like, no, I got this. And all of a sudden, kaboom, and I went boom. And he caught one arm. My glass of wine went flying by him, thank goodness not on him. And he caught my other arm, and I had actually like gone down one of the steps, and I was just like, oh my goodness. And the next day I had a gigantic bruise on my leg, but I knew. I just knew. I've got that knowing kind of gift. I knew that my whole issue had just got fixed. And it did. It went away completely after that. It's like I got a major, I don't think a chiropractor ever could have given me such a violent adjustment, but it was a violent adjustment, usually the kind of adjustment that's going to screw you up, not make you better. So ask. All you have to do sometimes is ask.
I was wondering two things. One is, how did you ever get out of that situation in Santa Cruz? And then how did you meet your husband?
Well, the Santa Cruz issue, intuition again. Remember, I was only 15 when this happened, and we had asked these guys if they had a place where we could stay, and they drove us out up into the mountains, but they were buying us wine, right? And when my travel partner, Francie, she was in the back seat, and this guy pulls out a knife and he starts like doing his fingernails with it, and my radar just went on high. And I was sitting there with that bottle of Boone's Farm, and I was in the passenger seat holding it like this. And I'm like, anybody make a false move and they're gonna get cracked in the head with this, because I was raised in a household with 5 boys, all older. I learned how to fight early on. I'm not proud of that, but sometimes it comes in handy. And then they stop at this open place in the middle. It's like, oh, well, let's just smoke a joint. And so I'm still with the bottle as a weapon, like, this is not happening. I don't know what you've got in mind, but this isn't happening. And then they brought us, we got back in, and we went to this abandoned ranch up in the hills, and it was very, very surreal because there was just this horse running around and tumbleweeds everywhere, no electricity. And so the 2 guys drop us off, we go in there, and salamanders and chameleons are running, and I waited for them to get back in their car and go around the corner, and I said, they are coming back with more guys. We're out of here. And she was 2 years older than me, and I'm the one that was making the smart decisions. And I said, let's go, we're out of here. And we went back out onto the road and got picked up by a little old farmer, and we sat in the back of his pickup until he brought us back to the coast, which leads to another weird story. You'll have to read the book. It's actually going to be a movie someday called Going to California. Oh, and the story about how I met my husband? At a bar on a Sunday night. But he was a total gentleman. I was actually producing a cookbook for my work, and he was a printer. So he gave me his card, and we chatted, and the next morning he called me and said how much fun he had talking to me. How old are you? 31 or 2? Yeah.
The old I publish cookbook trick. You know that well. And you've got several books out here that appear to be illustrated beautifully, and I didn't get a chance to flip through them yet.
Yeah.
But you've also done some interviews with various people that speak here. Any favorites that pop out for you?
Oh, well, Patty's so awesome. I've interviewed her twice, and she's actually a dear friend of mine. We do essential oils together. I've known her for a really long time. Kat Thompson, who was just here, she's a dear friend too. Matter of fact, her and Patty and I are talking about trying to get something going together and maybe doing a retreat or something. And Jody, of course, Jody was just here. And that's basically after Jody, that's what inspired me to call up and say, hey, how do I get in here and do a little chat?
Right, Jody's lovely, but we want the dirty takeaways from these interviews. It was wonderful to see Patty Peterson's home and her piano and a drum set and pictures and just this wonderful exchange. Certainly you take things away from that. What are some of those?
You want the dirt?
No, not the
Oh,
dirt, the joy and the...
Oh, the
what
joy. Oh, my
what
gosh.
the fun was from Patty, from Jody, from who else you did. Yeah.
Well,
Cat is wonderful.
they're, just being in their spirit and their light is, you get that. We do an energy exchange every time we're around each other, we just get all this positive groove going on. And I learn from them too. I learn when I'm talking to these people. And it's not just metaphysical people, even though I've had Don Snyder, who's a Akashic record reader. He's at Echoes, Arapaloozas once a month. He's pretty awesome too. He's read my records, which were spot on. Many cool people that I've met, ran into, and work with all the time that I bring in and chat with. So let's see, who's my favorite? One of the most unusual ones was when I was a talent agent, I was Hannah Kritzek's agent, and she's a 3'3" primordial dwarf, and I couldn't get her to talk. She sat there and nodded her head and just said yes or no and yes and no and very little, until I started talking about her pets. Then she brightened up. But the minute we turned off the cameras, she jumped out of her chair and started telling these stories, and I'm like, get the cameras back on, get the cameras back on. and it was too late. She had already gone out of focus, and so it's like, oh man, but she's an adorable, and I call her the triple threat, because even though she's 3'3", at 23 years old, she's an actress, she's a singer, she's a dancer. Don't ever let anybody tell you can't do it, because, right? If she can, we all should be moving mountains, for crying out loud.
And her light just showed up as soon as you started talking about something that brings her joy, like her pets, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I see in your handout visualization techniques for dealing with stress, adversity, and self-doubt. And many of us, I'll speak for myself at least, we have good intentions in doing this every day. Just wondering if you wanted to share any tips on visualization.
And why I think it works? Or just...
Yes, and tips on doing it, and maybe how to overcome the resistance sometimes to doing what we know we want to do.
Well, thank you for that question. That's a great question. Well, when I sat down and wrote those, I just channeled it. It came, it just comes to me like that, and I just pounded out the words as they were coming in. That's how it works for me. And but it's a practice that I also do. I have a gigantic thing of baking soda next to my bathtub, and I go buy the organic salts and get in there and meditate and visualize and ask all the questions that I have, and ask for what I need, and then sit and listen and get it all back. The visualization for me is a way of, I've always said this about myself, and I hope it's true for everybody. If I can see myself doing it, whether it's in my mind's eye or, well, which is your imagination, but your mind's eye, if I can see myself doing it, I know I can do it. I've always said that if I can't visualize me doing something, then it's not for me, I can't do it. Or not that I can't, it's not for me, I don't want to do it. I can do anything I want to do. The trick is to want to do it. I'm not very good at things I don't want to do. But the visualizations always start with the salt bath, because it's so cleansing. It helps take off all that psychic lint that's been stuck to you all day, or all week, or all month, or all year. Sometimes, you just have to have a tool. The salt is very healing, and if you get enough in there, it's almost like going into the ocean, because the ocean is so healing. The visualizations are basically saying to yourself, I can do this, I've got this. See yourself doing it, whether it's for relieving stress, and just seeing all that stress go down the drain with all that water, or whether you're in the shower and you're watching it go down, after the fact. That's just how I like to roll with things. And like I said, I channeled those when I got the information, and I think they're fabulous, and it's all things that I've done and continue to do. What was the second part of that?
Overcoming the resistance, the
Oh,
not
the-
feeling like it.
Well, that's usually the best time to do it, right? The more resistant you feel is, the more you should probably give in to it, but telling yourself to do something you don't want to do or you're resistant to it, you have to ask yourself why. Why am I resisting this? Because it's going to be something that's holding you back from the inside and not an external, it's not an external pressure that's holding you back, it's you holding yourself back from doing something that might be good for you. Maybe you're holding on to some negative piece to use that resistance for something else. Who knows why we resist things other than ourselves, but we have to, either take the step or wait till the time feels right for you. If it doesn't feel right, don't do it. If you're ready, dive in. I hope I answered that.
Well, that's something that I struggle with as well, Don, is when I can't get there, and what tools do I have to, and it's a tough one.
Mm-hmm.
So bathe in salt, got it.
Salt and baking soda, mix them together. And you can put, the instructions are in my handout. But always be grateful. Always be grateful and thank whether you say God or Spirit or just be grateful and thank the universe for allowing us to be.
We've got a few minutes left. Any other questions right now?
Well, I'll even say in closing, there's times when I'm resisting too. There's times when I don't want to do something that's going to be good for me. And I'm by no means perfect. I'm a work in progress and always will be. But as long as I can be honest with myself and think about what it is that's holding me back and why I'm resisting something that's usually something that's buried kind of deep down in your psyche that you still need to deal with and still need to either forgive or let go. And the forgiveness is a big key, being able to forgive. That as I started to realize the pain of my father's abandonment, that's when I started having healthier relationships. That's actually when I started treating my husband even better, because I didn't know that's what it was. I always thought it was my mother. I always thought it was the initial abandonment, but it wasn't. It was really the trauma because my father was my hero. I fashioned myself after him. I tried to be funny like he was. I drew pictures like he drew pictures, and he was always the life of the party, so I became the life of the party. And him going on without me and then telling me that, he's got a new family now and I would not be part of it, was crushing. So then I crushed in response. But when I finally realized that, and when I found somebody finally that held me up to a higher level and a higher esteem, I really started changing. And trust me, it wasn't even until I was in my 30s and 40s. I went a long time beating myself up. But it's what I had to go through to get where I am today. If I hadn't had all those experiences, I think, what would I even have to talk about? That would just be boring. Now I've got a million stories to tell, and they all are with the message of finding yourself, loving yourself, healing yourself first before you can go heal other people. So with that, I thank you for being here today and sharing this time with us.
I love it. I could respond and talk to this all afternoon.
Oh, and I do have a little sign-up sheet, because if anybody out here wants to come and be on my talk show and let me interview you and you can tell your story, sign up for it.
Yeah, I love it.
It's free. I shoot out of Bloomington Cable, and I do it generally on Thursday nights, and because I have the studio always reserved at the same time we shoot at 6 o'clock every Thursday. But I don't do it, I mean, doing it every week gets to be a commitment, and I don't always have that time. We started out like gangbusters every Thursday. But now I'm looking for more people to chat with, because I'm not trying to do, everybody that's a movie star or a singer, or, I want really compelling, intriguing stories that you can share, because sharing your story helps heal you. I found that out after many, many years of holding it in. So.
Well, I resonate, and somebody else may have a question, because we do have a few minutes, of sharing your story and having somebody that you can share that openly with, and the acceptance and that.
It's a no judgment zone, right?
So interviewing regular people, we all have extraordinary stories. People just don't know it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's why I call it real people, because I want to talk to real people, not these magazine faces that are the plastic people that are much different people when they're not on the big screen, right?
Does your show format start and stop, or is it just one continuous taping?
We call it real people for a reason. We keep it real. There's no stop. There's no, we shoot straight on through, even when I make a mistake. Or, yeah, 'cause there's times when I've have a great question and then go blank. It's like, you just keep talking for a minute and it'll come back to me. So, yeah, but I wouldn't have it any other way, because I think it's organic. I don't like to know too much about my guests before I talk to them, because then it sounds contrived. I want to listen to people tell their stories and develop my questions as we go. That's just the best way I can keep it real for you and for me.
Is the show recorded that people can watch later?
Yep. Yeah, we have 3 cameras set up, so it gets edited. We put on, an opener, and then put the credits on, and basically put the show in the middle and upload it. I upload it to YouTube, and then I put it on my Facebook page, and then I send it to all of the cable channels in town. So it's in Minneapolis, Minneapolis MTN, yeah, and SPNN Southwest, which is Minnetonka, Hopkins, Richfield, Edina, and I'm missing one. Bloomington, yeah. Thank you, because we shoot out of Bloomington. No, actually, Bloomington is Bloomington. Southwest has their own. And then the southern, Lakeville, Savage, and Burnsville. So it's out there. But I don't even have cable, so I can't even watch it myself on TV. But there's YouTube too.
All right, Lake Harriet, please, thank you to Stephanie Lee Allensworth.
Thank you. I'm going to have us do a humming session to retune our vagus nerves. The vagus nerve controls every nerve in our body, and you can reactivate it, heal it, retune your body just by humming. And I'm just going to start off, and you guys just join in.